Good evening, everyone. I'm Wendell Jones, and welcome to this edition of the program. The platform on this program, we examine national issues. The Valley Boys, they are mourning the passing of their beloved leader, Winston Gus Cooper, who passed away this past weekend. Gus Cooper, a nationalist. Gus Cooper, a national treasure. Gus Cooper, the father of modern-day Junkanoo in the Bahamas. The leader of the Valley Boys started the Valley Boys in the 50s and made it the premier Junkanoo group in the country. Recorded more firsts on Bay Street than any other group in the history of Junkanoo in the Bahamas. And so tonight on our program, we are going to discuss the life and times of Winston Gus Cooper. JCN, we are going to do two programs, this one this evening, and on Friday a special tribute when we are going to hear the words of Mr. Winston Gus Cooper himself on Friday evening. But this evening we have invited a number of his colleagues, his friends here, to talk about his life and times, and we introduce them. Arthur, nice to have you.
Thank you.
Mr. Arthur Gibson. Mr. Doyle Burrows.
Very much.
Nice to have you here. Campbell Cleare.
Pleasure.
Nice to have you here. And the chairman of the Valley Boys. Nice to have you here, Mr. Brian Adley.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
We begin our conversation this evening. Let's talk with Doyle Burrows. When I was a boy, I remember you and Gus Cooper visiting the various participants of the Valley Boys. In those days, many people, they pasted their costumes at home. But for starters, you grew up with Gus Cooper, didn't you?
Yeah, we grew up in the same neighborhood. I don't know how old we was when we met Gus, but when you look at it today, it doesn't seem far, but Gus lived up by Bahamas Bus and Truck, and I lived down below Berry Christie. So we couldn't venture up in that part of the town. Gus lived on the border of White Town. You know, the next block was White Town. But we met at St. George's Church. But Gus and I has been friends now for over 60 years.
For 60 years.
We rushed together for 55. We're the only two who's been from 1958 until now. The only two. The nearest one to us would be Ed McPhee. You have a lot of people today will say they are Valley Boys and how long they've been. Or I've been Valley Boys, some might have been 20 years or 30 years, but the only two who's been around. And Gus, when he was sick with his heart attack, when he didn't miss a raid, it was me and Barry Miller. But I've been with the Valley Boys from day one until the 14th parade. I don't go to the parades anymore, but I still participate. I don't go to the parades.
You are definitely a founder of the Valley Boys.
It's no doubt about that.
Yes.
It's no doubt about it. Some people get it mixed up now. They omit. You know, they tend to omit and try to change history. But myself and Gus, and the nearest person to myself and Gus is Ed McPhee. He's still a participant.
Respect.
Arthur Gibson,
Sir.
you used to be a Valley Boy, right?
Never.
He's a friend of Gus.
You know, actually, I knew Mr. Cooper, I guess in the early 60s or mid-60s when he used to come to the Livingston Boston House along with Enid Backford, B.J. Nottage, Rudy Moutry, dealing with the B3As. I didn't start participating in Junkanoo until 1969. And then we became rivals.
Yes.
Okay? And I could always remember, boy, you're going to go rush with them, that gang? In those days, there was no group. We had gangs. And they didn't have no names. If you sponsor, City Lumber. We used to rush with Bahamas Blenders, y'all rush with Blenders. East Bay Service. There wasn't no all these names that we have today. But we always maintained contact and on a friendly basis. We had some differences, but we never ever lost that. Additionally, right around the corner is where he got his wife from off our blocks. Okay? That's where he met Cassie, so he used to be sneaking around any car, and, you know, we was little boys, we didn't want around the tire get flat or something that happened there, so, you know, but, and, it, you know, in between all the parades, difficulty, conflicts between the groups, he was always there. He would call me, these boys getting out of hand, or we would try to wake it up, okay? Whatever direction, if Jungle started to take a turn in the wrong direction, he was the one who would call a meeting and we would sat down, and a lot of people don't know this, and try to make sure Jungle goes in the right direction. You know, I hear all this talk about him, what he did, etc. Nobody know how much he did behind the scenes to enhance Jungle.
Campbell Cleare, you grew up opposite St. George's Church, so you must be a Valley boy at heart.
Absolutely.
How do you remember Gus?
I guess the first time I met Gus, well, first of all, I didn't join the Valley Boys because of Gus Cooper. I joined the Valley Boys because of Spec, as Ed McPhee. Yeah. Because Spec was a beller, first class beller. Nobody has ever been able to ring bells like Spec. So I would go to Spec's house and try to ring bells like him, and he said, well, listen, why don't you come and join the group? I said, well, you know, my father don't want me to join no Jonkono group. How you could be a Jonkono group? He want me to go to school. Eventually, somebody prevailed upon my mother, and I joined the group. And I think the first costume, it was a pirate's costume. We had a flat pirate ship, and I forgot the name of the costume. But one of the main things that struck me when I met Gus was total dismissal of me by Gus. I thought my costume, because I spent, like you say, we used to pace at home, and I was pasted, and this was the finest costume out. When I get to Gus said, where you going with that? You want to, and as far as I was concerned, this was a fantastic costume. And he eventually allowed me to rush, but I was in the back. I wasn't anywhere
Dunkin' Donuts.
near the front. But two of the, I guess, for me, the important elements about Gus is his dedication to an art form that has not yet been able to remunerate him in terms of financially, or anybody financially. I just don't see how someone could dedicate their entire life to something that gives you no financial reward. I just found that amazing to me. Because any other art form in the Bahamas, you get paid. If you're a visual artist, you sell a piece of painting and you get paid. Junkanoo, which Gus dedicated his life to, never gave Gus that kind of financial reward, which I found extraordinary. The other thing I always found about Gus was his sense of discipline. This was a fella was totally disciplined. I remember one time going into the shack by the National Insurance. Remember the shack down there?
Yeah, in the Jumbo Village.
Jumbo Village. And there were some of these little cans on the floor with holes in it. And so I said, Gus, what are these things? Look at them. Jesus Christ, they smoking again? Let me tell you something. He raised holy hell in that place, because the guy was smoking grass or whatever they were smoking. He raised holy hell. He dragged them out, and I mean physically. These fellas who bigger than Gus, physically drag them out and make sure, check them out, who's smoking this grass. Get out of his blankety blank shack. That's the kind of fella he was. Totally disciplined. When you entered Gus's shack, there was a sense of discipline that I've never seen anywhere in the Junkanoo. Because Junkanoo was not the most disciplined fellas. Yes. All of them are prima donnas, but Gus was able to control and cause the Valley Boys to be, in my view, the most disciplined Junkanoo group ever.
In the country. Brian Adley, you are the chairman of the Valley Boys, and congratulations on your 2 straight wins, Boxing Day and New Year's Day. Obviously, you have been able to maintain some discipline with the Valley Boys.
Yeah, well, let me first say that what the 3 of these gentlemen have said so far encapsulates Gus's life. And the true test of a good leader is how his organization performs when he's not around. And obviously Gus was not around for the past 6 months, but you can see from the results of both the Boxing Day and New Year's Day parades that what Gus taught us, what Gus instilled in us, all came to fruition during those two parades. There was some doubt, not amongst Valley Boys, but amongst our supporters in the community as to what form of presentation they would see in the absence of Gus. And I think they were not just surprised, but satisfied. And that would be, in my opinion, the greatest tribute to Gus, how he performed in his absence, because he has been not just a recruiter of the talented people that we have in the Valley Boys, but he has groomed a lot of us and taught us the art of Junkanoo. And when I got the news on Saturday morning, early Saturday morning, I was shocked. Even though we all knew that Gus was ill, we were shocked because to us, Gus has always been Superman. He's always been able to bounce back from any health challenges that he would have had. And of course, he's bounced back on many years from defeats that we would have had on Bay Street. And so, even though we were aware that he was ill, it came as a shock that our Superman, this strong man, had passed away. And it's taken a toll on the membership, both young and old. And you will see expressions of that over the coming days.
Yeah. Will the Valley Boys be the same, you think? And all of you can participate in this. Without Gus Cooper, I know that you had 2 wins, Christmas and Boxing Day, but in terms of, Campbell Cleare mentioned discipline and all of that, and I'm sure a whole lot of research went into the costumes that you brought out on Bay Street twice a year, really. Would it be the same?
Yeah, you know, like you said, there's a lot of people that the Valley Boys invested time and energy and talent in. And I don't think they're going anywhere. Gus mightn't be there, but say, for instance, with me, I've been with Gus like 55 years. I can hear Gus talking to me Christmas. He wasn't there.
He was talking to you.
Talking to me.
You heard him talking to you Christmas?
Just like he was there. You know, and we kept saying, boy, if couple was here, this is what couple would do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't do it half because couple wouldn't like it that way. And that's in the back of your head. Just like with Brian. You know, when Brian them started, you know what I used to tell them as little boys? Gus didn't have time for them, you know. He didn't have time for his boys, or the Stable and Garden boys. I don't know if Brian remember. He used to tell me, Doyle, go down and look at them for me. They used to be in Gus' yard, in the backyard. And I used to tell him, the only way you all rush, because you all related to Gus Cooper, because you all are the nastiest fellas in the world. And 1 or 2 of them, at least one for sure, turned out to be an excellent Junkanoo man. My godchild.
Yeah.
I got to answer that. You know, I have to respond to that.
Okay, you're a Stapleton guy.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Well,
He's a Stapleton Valley boy.
My
Okay.
family moved into Stapleton Gardens in 69, 70, and I became friendly with Gus's children. And we all went to primary school and high school together. And that is how I eventually joined the Valley Boys. But Gus was just as demanding on us as he was on everybody in the organization. And I'm using demanding as a polite word because he was tough on us. And Gus was only tough on people that he thought had potential and had something to offer to the group. Quite frankly, the only person in the group Gus was never tough on was Doyle. I could never understand that. But I don't know whether it's because as childhood friends, Doyle was always bigger than him, and Doyle may have been the only person he was afraid of. But I later learned the reason why he never was tough on Doyle the way he was on the others, and that's because he and Doyle saw eye to eye. Doyle knew what he expected of him, and Gus knew what Doyle expected of him. So Gus was tough on Campbell, he was tough on the Prime Minister, as Christie as we call him, tough on AG, even though he was a competitor. And I later learned that he was only tough on people that he knew could bring results. And some people couldn't take it. They left and formed other groups or left and joined other groups. But those of us that stuck around, we owe him a debt of gratitude because it's changed our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I said it before, my joining the Valley Boys and being involved in the Valley Boys and having an opportunity to follow his leadership has changed my life. And I'll leave that right there.
Okay.
But I couldn't let Doyle pick on my boys like that because we had it just as rough as anybody else.
Yeah.
You know, Wendell, I don't know if there's, if I'm coining a phrase, autocratic democracy. Because Gus was an autocrat, but he also allowed people to flourish. And like Brian said, he was tough on you, but if he saw something in you, he would bring it out of you. If you were a rough stone, he'd make you into a diamond, you know? That's the kind of fella that Gus was. And he's created an institution as a consequence of that.
Yeah.
The Valley Boys is an institution. We will suffer because of the loss of Gus, I agree, but we will continue. And we will continue for him, and in spite of our loss.
I could add two things to that. I can remember when we started the JCNP, I was the first acting chairman of it. And after a few weeks of the meeting, Gus brought me this Mays rule of law. Boy, I see you look like you're going in the right direction, but you need to read this. You know, soft spoken. And I'm like, who's supposed to read this? You know, well, you. You understand what I'm saying? That's the type of place he was. In AG Electric Warehouse, I'm a Saxon, but every morning there's Mr. Cooper sitting down waiting patiently. Man, you gotta look at this thing for me, man. You understand?
Yeah.
Quietly, you know, and persistently. Until I used to ask, what do you think? You think there's a body? You understand? But and like Brian said, he know if you can do a job, you can get it done for it, he will work with you. And you know, I must say this, we were able to set the rivalry and whatever aside, and we became brothers, okay? And that's what I love about it more than anything else. You know,
Doyle, the Valley Boys really started with fellas who were east of East Street. Isn't that right?
Well, the Valley Boys started with people who was between Montrose and Montreal. It actually started, you know, as I always have a discussion with Gus and says, you know, your Junkanoo group started in 1958. But to me, the Valley Boys started in 1960. But you got to add your 2 years when you carried your friends. I think Godfrey was in that too, Godfrey Innes. And Kippy Pindler, and Kippy Pindler was Sparky's big brother. Lenny Taylor, Buck Fountain.
Right.
And these guys, when he started with, they were from, Gully was from the Pond. Some of them were lived in Centerville or from the upper part of the valley. Not necessarily where he was. Because when I found out that Gus was going to carry a group of his friends, it was like in October, and I had already committed to go with Spurgeon Smith. But I helped them because those fellas didn't have one iota of a Junkanoo. Gus had to cut the paper, he had to show them how to French, which he rushed before for organized group, because he rushed with Edward Fitzgerald Daddy in Baintown. And he swear that he would never rush with nobody else to be the fellas bishop the costume. and we had to pay for it, £3.10. He said, no, he's not rushing with anybody else. But it was the fellas from in our area and some of the fellas who ran with the Pioneer Sporting Club. If you ran for the Pioneer Sporting Club, you had to rush for the Valley Boys. It was one and the same. Like he's talking about Specs. Most people wouldn't know that word. I haven't heard that. Ed McPhee is Specs.
Yeah.
He and I was like brothers. I bring him into Junkanoo. We were like brothers. You know, I tell the people that when you look back at it, we were poor and you had poorer.
Some people said y'all were elitists, you know,
That was
Doyle
not true.
Burrows.
No, people only repeating what they hear other people say. They say, well, the wall was put there because of this. No, it so happened that if you...
But you on a car? Anybody else in the car?
We didn't have no car.
You had a car. You
if
own a car.
Yeah, that's late. No, but but what I'm saying is, Jones,
Yeah.
when you look at it, like I said, we were poor and didn't even know. We didn't know we were poor because everybody was poor. And it so happens that...
Some people were poorer.
Yeah, Ed was poorer.
Yes.
That's true.
You know, they lived in Malone Yard. But we didn't treat them any different. When I ate, he ate. If I had a slice of bread, he'd get half. We were that close.
But the leaders of the Valley Boys at the time were considered middle class people.
No, the difference is the Valley Boys, most of the fellas who rushed with the Valley Boys went to high school.
That's the difference.
We went to high school.
And further
And
education.
we changed it.
Right.
We were young, you know, we started as young people. We weren't ruffians and rogues. That's what Junkanoo was in the beginning, ruffians and rogues, the fellas that throw all the take a slop bucket and throw the piss on the place for weeks and weeks and put them on and rub up to you. We changed that. I don't know if it was by a coincidence or when you look back at it, at planning.
That brought a little class to Junkanoo.
Yeah, we brought it. But you know who really brought class or want people to rush was Penland, the Prime Minister. When he started to rush scrap, oh, it was acceptable then if the Prime Minister could rush.
Let's take a break here on our program. We are discussing the life and times of our friend Winston Gus Cooper. We take this break, we'll come right back.